As HR professionals, we are responsible for managing the employee's life cycle from onboarding to offboarding. But while we are so busy supporting employees, how can we support ourselves? When our careers plateau, how can we boost our marketability and stay relevant? The answer? HR Certified. Whether you are new in your HR career or an experienced vet, HR Certified is here to support your HR career goals by helping you navigate the certification process. Why certify? Passing the certification exam gives you instant credibility, respect in the workplace, as you immediately apply new skills, making you better at what you do. Upward mobility, by enhancing your earnings potential and career autonomy. We offer on-demand and fast-track certification test preparation courses. At HR Certified, we fully embrace our role in bridging the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Join over the 500 graduates before you. Take the next step in your career. Get HR Certified. To learn more, please visit www.gethrcertified.com.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Anthony Howard. I'm the founder and CEO of HR Certified. And I am honored to have you here as we kick off our series towards DEIB 2.0. You just saw the commercial for HR Certified. We'll go over just a little bit about us, but I also want to introduce our co-partner, Wanido. Now, I need y'all to say it with me. It is called Wanido. What you want to do is click the links that we provide to you if you want to go deeper or learn more about our partners, those that are sitting on the panel. But we're proud to partner with Wanido because our visions are definitely aligned in creating better work experiences and increasing organizational health. Not only just for the organizations themselves, but also for the HR departments. So we want you to know that this is not a presentation. This is a conversation. And so if you're watching us, please tell us where are you hailing us from? Where are you from? What your role is? What company you represent? If you're so inclined, we see you in the chat. So as you are saying that if we are unable to answer any questions or incorporate some of your comments, we definitely have the ability, even after the stream, to lean in and to respond to you. I really have to begin off with saying Happy International Women's Day. This day has been is recognized as one as the contributions that women make, in particular in the workforce, and to acknowledge the unique challenges that you encounter while you're being great, right? And so I want to be able to acknowledge that women have played an important instrumental part of my life, being raised by my grandmother, being surrounded by my sister and aunties, and then even as founder and CEO. The majority of my clients are women. And of course, in working and partnering in my 20-year career in human resources. But we know we have work to do in that regards. And so I would be remiss unless I were to recognize that. So I mentioned Wanido, and I need y'all to say it, even if you say it out loud or kind of like underneath your breath. What you wanna do is click the link. So you know about HR Certified. I'm going to show just a little video about Wanido and more about them.
Wanido wasn't built for the average employer. Wanido was built for the employee-centric employer. The one who understands that creating a great place to work creates better outcomes and higher profit margins. The one who is driven to fix problems, not just fixate on them. Research shows that very few companies are truly employee-centric. The choice is yours.
Well, also, if you don't click the link, you could scan it as well. We're going to drop the link to learn more about HR Certified, as well as Wanido in the chat. We encourage you to, if you want to know more, what you want to do is click the link. Now, also another partner that we have on the line with us as well is McLean and Company. And Nella Brown is here representing McLean and Company. And the reason why their role in this discussion is so important is because they are the ones that know the facts as it relates to all things human capital management, and in particular, as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So what better partner to have in leading and helping set the framework of our discussions around data? Because it's important that we can't, DEIB in general, a lot of people think of it as feelings based, and in some aspects there is some soft competency aspect to it, but those conversations have to happen off of something that's quantifiable. And so, Nella, we're glad that you are here. If you want to introduce yourself to everyone.
Yes, thank you so much, Anthony. Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. My name is Nella Brown, and I'm the Regional Account Manager at McLean and Company. I've been involved with supporting HR professionals for the past 7 years, and I really want to help them find resources, guides, and the training to significantly make an impact to the organizations and the employees that they support. I have an HR certification and background in organizational development. And most of my work has been in the space of helping leaders in talent development. So I'm really excited to be here with you today. I'm really passionate about this topic. And I really am grateful for Anthony and the team and the team of expert of panelists today.
It was important to understand all of our partners as it relates to this, because this is the support that we all are having, right, relates to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. The reality is that it's the emphasis, or the corporate the corporate emphasis on as for DEI as part of its strategy is reducing, and employees are feeling it. And it could not have come at the most inopportune time, as we're in this post pandemic era in which the needs of employees have changed. And so it was important to really bring this back up. And for me personally, I fell into HR early, over 20 years ago. And I remember DEI. I remember it was almost like an honors program at work, right? You could go onto it if you performed well, you did your job well, you could be a part of this group, kind of like an affinity group. And then there was a different emphasis on it when the murder of George Floyd, right? It was more of that. Now, what do we do about this? How do we respond to employees' needs as it relates to it? And there was a huge emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion, belonging, in corporations across the United States. And then it started to wane. And so the data is we have a panel of experts here to bring that data to life in a down to earth way, right? Not just reading the data, but also at the practitioner level, at the employee level, at the consultant level, to establish the baseline of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, because that definition has evolved over this time since I fell into it. And it's as it's evolving, now everyone is catching up to it. So we hope that, and this is a call to really lean into the benefits of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, why it's so important, and how it's really essential as it relates to and critical to the employee experience, as well as retention of the attraction and retention of top talent. And so with that, I wanted to go over our vision and mission as an organization. The purpose of HR Certified is to increase diversity within the corporate HR departments nationwide. If you were to close your eyes for a second and think about the most quintessential HR person in your life, in your working career, if you opened them up, more than likely they would not look like me. Demographics of the United States is changing and evolving, and along with that, anything that supports it should also do the same. And so our vision is to increase diversity in HR departments through attraction of our next gen, as well as upskilling through professional coaching and earning certification and professional development. And we believe, and not just believe it, this is also fact, is that more diversity can create better workplaces, work experiences, and better returns for business. And so with that, just a little bit about who I am. I'm born and raised in Chicago. I live here in Atlanta. I always say that if you're thinking about moving here, don't, because we're full. Thank you. And I've been an HR practitioner for 20 years. I started off as an analyst, and I pivoted through certification to be a business partner. And now I am founder and CEO of HR Certified. Since 2009, I serve on an advisory board for Mind Edge Learning. I started HR Certified as a side hustle, and actually this year will be going on my 5th year. And I consider myself a non-traditional profile. I have an associate's degree. I did not have intention on coming into this space, and my career kind of evolved on the go. And I also am known as that HR guy. It's like, what does that mean? Well, I'm a black guy in HR. That's what it means in essence. But also that's my hashtag. If you are out there on all platforms, you can follow. I'm looking at the chat and I'm laughing because I'm seeing some of the things that are out there. We don't want the winter to come down to Atlanta. I agree with that. But I'm the whole point of this is I am you. I've been there. I'm an employee. I've been a practitioner. I've been a consultant. And now my dedication is increasing attractive upskilling and attracting next gen into this space. So with that, I want to go ahead and introduce our panelists here, our expert panel. And we've already talked about Nella here. You know what? And I think I got somebody who I need to join us. I am so sorry. Where is? Oh, there she is. Is she here? No. All right. So let me go ahead and bring on and introduce Dom. If you would introduce yourself to everyone.
Absolutely. So my name is Dominic Grimes Medlin, but everyone calls me Dom. I am originally from Indianapolis, Indiana, but I live in Effingham, North Carolina right now. A lot of people are not familiar, but it's about 20 minutes from the Triangle. I have been in HR now for a little bit over 10 years. And it's like part of my experience of I fell into HRs myself and so as well. And so I'm having worked in operations management and recognizing the deficit of setting people up for success. And so making sure that they have the tools and resources to be successful in their position. So I figured the best way to help people throughout their journey and making sure that we're creating diverse, equitable, and inclusive policies and procedures and so throughout was to enter the HR realm. So I've been in that realm now, working diligently and so now for over 10 years now.
And Dom is bringing a unique perspective of giving us a landscape of DEIB in the public sector. And and working in private sector for so long, it just seems like there's these two. I mean, even though, it's like a different world, right? Working HR in the public sector is different than private. working in either one of them could be different than working in utility. So bringing that perspective to light is definitely will add value to the panel. Thank you, Don, for that. I'm going to bring Rainer on. Rainer, introduce yourself to everybody.
Hey, Anthony.
Hey.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Hey, it's great to be here. My name is Rainer J. Liu. My pronouns are he, him. And a little bit about me. I've been in the DEI game for a long, long time, well before this was really a terminology that people threw around. So I've got about 10 years of experience solving tough global DEI problems. So I've had the opportunity to work in many contexts, many cultural contexts, and many geographic contexts, solving really tough DEI problems that most people think, no, that we just can't do that. And I've always been in those spaces where I'm like, no, we can find ways to figure that out. So a little bit about me, besides that experience, I have sort of an eclectic background that I'm bringing to the conversation today. About 70 articles published on workplace politics, evolution, culture, and society. About 100+ hours as an integral coach, working with senior managers and executives on DEI, as well as many different humanistic issues. And I call myself an integral coach, a DEI strategist, and a systems theorist. And my expertise is really about turning discord and things that are hard for us into right relations. So I'm really excited to be contributing what hopefully is a more both a micro and a macro perspective around what DEI is currently and what it could be. So really excited to be here with everybody today.
Well, thank you. Those are definitely unique perspectives to really overlay with the current landscape. I find that there's various degrees of awareness about DEI, all the way from the definitions of the word themselves to the benefits of it and why it exists. So definitely those perspectives will be definitely critical. Thank you for joining, Rainer. Now, look, everybody that's out there right now, I think you guys had told me where you guys are from. I think we got some people from Atlanta, Nashville, Seattle. It looks like, we even have Fargo, North Dakota, Milwaukee, Texas, Dubai. Wow, that's awesome. So we have a very diverse audience here today with us. I'm gonna bring everybody back on stage as we go about asking our very first question, which is fundamental before we start anywhere, right? Which is, what is DEIB and its importance? I can tell you that, again, depending on the organization that you're with, the bench strength as it relates to the knowledge of this varies. It's a huge spectrum. And that spectrum is, and I've heard it, you know what? Hey, Asia, we got to go. We have to go back. Look, we are not IT. We are human resources. And so we have to deal with the hand that have been dealt with us. And so we're just moving on with that. But I do want to bring Asia on stage so that she can introduce herself. Asia, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody? Now that look, and you can we clap for Asia for overcoming whatever technical difficulties that she just encountered, and she's back on stage with us.
Yes, and if I'm breathing hard, I just ran up 2 flights of stairs. But good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Aisha Jordan, founder and CEO of Essence of Culture Consulting, where we advocate the employee experience by helping small businesses transform their culture. And I am really excited to be here. I was introduced into DEI as an ERG lead in my previous life. And so I will be speaking from the perspective as a practitioner. Awesome.
Thank you, Asia. And welcome back. You got your steps in today. And again, let's celebrate her. I'm telling you, it's small wins that are very important here. All right, let's bring everybody back. Nella, Don, Rainer. Okay, so this is where we are. What is DEIB and its importance here? Yes, and also if you want to connect with her, the link is in the chat. All right, So who wants to begin with what's DEIB and its importance?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start.
Thanks, Don.
So DEIB stands for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Diversity, and so as far as a company, not only in terms of race or gender, and so but also sexual orientation, age, national origin, physical ability, religion, and so much more. Even social economic status, and so just diverse in so many multiple ways. Equity, as far as being impartial, and so to ensure that all individuals have equal opportunities, and so to grow and progress. Inclusion, and so to make sure that both in policy and in practice, that employers should focus on making sure that everybody is heard and has the opportunity to to voice their opinions. And then belonging, and so is one of the newest additions, and so in developments to DEI. So just represents the affinity and positive relationships that emerge between employees, and so and their backgrounds between businesses actively promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yep. Those definitions are important, and it was a lot. That was a lot, right? But it all represents the diversity that is us, that is our country, right? And our workforce, and our customers, right? So thank you for elaborating on that. Rainer, what's the importance of all of that, right? Why should corporations be concerned? Why should employees be why is this initiative, I don't even like saying that, why is that focus on DEIB important?
This is a huge question, Anthony, and it's a super important question. I could go for a long time about the importance of it, but what I would say, the place from which I would start around why organizations, leaders, people within organizations, really any person who is a sentient being will want to consider the importance of DEIB has to do with the fact that our organizations are largely powered by humans, and humans are not just resources that we plug into a machine, but if we actually take the time to understand what goes on in the human experience, every single human being is a world. So for me, often with DEIB principles, there's this question of how can we be as inclusive as possible? There I am using a root word, so work with me here. But how can we be as inclusive as possible to understand what it is that powers our organizations? If we fail to acknowledge the real human factors that go into why people show up to work, what happens to people at work, and things like that, it's only going to be so long before we start to see things like slips in performance and things of that nature. So part of why I like to advocate, just DEIB thinking or a way of being with regard to these principles has to do with the fact that if we can get it right, what we do is we give ourselves the opportunity to take the statistic that I think many people are familiar with, where only about 20% of people are engaged in their work. We might have to do some really hard work to figure out what is this thing, what is the language that we might need to learn to speak in order to embody these principles. But as far as I can tell, if we can actually embody DEIB principles, we can actually push that number up to 100%. It's not easy, but it's absolutely possible. And I believe DEIB is one of the critical areas of thinking that will lead us there. I think without DEIB, you won't get there. With DEIB, you make this absolutely possible in the workplace.
Yeah, I being a practitioner, I think where organizations went at first was the money. Let's look at our comp. But the reality is you can throw that money at them. But if you don't address these things, then it don't matter. It's a temporary fix, right? So thank you for that insight. All right. So now we're going to the landscape of DEIB. Now that we know the letters, right? DEIB and its importance. We also need to know where we are right now. And wouldn't it be nice that if you went to work and it felt like that picture that you're seeing right now as the landscape? That would be awesome, right? At that point, it's you wouldn't even have to worry about just like, you know what, I can't wait to I'm excited about this. It's no longer work, it's relaxing. I feel welcomed, right? But let's look at where we are with the landscape. And with that, this is now introducing our partner McLean and Company and their report, the HR Trends Report. Nella?
Thank you so much, Anthony. I want to say thank you for everyone tuning in today. You're learning more about this topic, and that demonstrates that you're dedicated in maintaining policies and practices that promote fairness, equality, and diversity in the workplace. As an HR professional and a DEI leader, you play a critical role in employee experience. Where I can assist you and where McLean can assist you is to help develop your team and to create solutions that will really help drive that strategy. It will really help drive that clear purpose and define those with strategic pillars and to really help you carry out those initiatives. Whether that's inclusive leadership behavioral training, implementing sponsorship programs, expanding campus recruitment strategies to more diverse schools, or even creating a governance model. Our research and best practices can help you stay up to date and take frameworks that work, and you can apply it to your unique environment. With our templates, you don't have to start from scratch. We can allow you to drive your initiatives faster and with more confidence. And our advisors will be with you every step of the way, supporting you through project management and guided implementations, because we want to help you progress with these strategies and also develop yourself within DE&I leadership and business acumen. So, as I mentioned, McLean and Company provides research and advisory tools to help you succeed in your role. And one of the annual reports that we release is called the HR Trends Report. And this highlights the top trends for the year ahead, enabling you and your organization to prioritize and strategize effectively. For this year, recruiting and employee experience remain the top two priorities for HR. Among that, we see developing leaders, controlling labor costs, L&D, and DEI within the top six. Today, I'll be discussing some of the DEI insights that this report has highlighted. In my role today, I will dive into these data points and some of the trends we're seeing, and the panelists will help answer some of the most pressing questions. Our goal is for you to walk away with this information so that you can reignite the sense of urgency around this topic. We're here to talk about it and explore how we can do it differently. Next slide. So, did you know only a third of organizations have a formal DEI strategy? But this is critical. It's critical to have one. Organizations with a formal DEI strategy are 1.4 times more likely to perform at a higher rate, 1.8 times more likely to be high performing at social and environmental sustainability, and 2.4 times more likely to be high performing in DEI. However, the number of organizations without a formal strategy has remained stagnant over the last 3 years, with organizations that do not have an informal strategy remaining 35 to 38% year over year. So what can we do to have and create a formal DEI strategy? Well, it starts with recognizing the importance of DEI and committing it to as a core value of the organization. From there, it's important to gather data and insights to inform the strategy. It's important to identify key stakeholders who can provide input and support. It's also important to set measurable goals and objectives and establish a plan for implementation and evaluation. By taking these steps, organizations can create a formal DEI strategy that not only drives performance and sustainability, but also demonstrates a commitment to creating an inclusive and equitable workplace for all. Anthony, back to you.
Yeah, I mean, this is the reality is that there are different levels of adoption of DEIB. Either you're not doing it, you're doing it scrappy, or you have truly a formal documented strategy. And it's kind of a mix of all three. And it's leaning more towards not doing it. And so this where the question comes in is why is the DEI on the downturn, right? I had mentioned earlier, that's just call to action for organizations to respond after the murder of George Floyd, and it was just activity all over the place. The roles were posted, right? Functions were established. It just seemed like there was all this activity and this momentum, and now it's on a downturn, right? And so why is that, right? That's the next question for our panel. Who wants to lead with that one?
Yeah, I'll kick this off, Anthony.
Okay.
With the inflation, inflation and the debate of being in a recession, companies are scaling back on budgets, but this is a grand opportunity for companies to position their brand and attract diverse talent and boost innovation. Secondly, individuals are really seeking opportunities that are purposeful and looking to alleviate stress and work life balance. However, in the context of the trend report, companies are underutilizing recruitment strategies and overall having a strategy in place to efficiently and effectively execute change within their organization.
Yeah. I mean and it's such a unique flavor, right? Every company that decides to do it have different reasons for wanting to do it.
Yeah,
And
and
that
well,
might
yeah,
mhm. And that might be
um,
different than what the employees want, right? So it comes across like what was that descriptor I used? Scrappy. It was just like, but go ahead.
hmm
Yep. Dom, did you have
and
any?
also the
Go
I
ahead.
just want to add one thing to that. And also, when we think about change, we have to consider the embedded culture that's already in that organization. If they've done things for so many years a certain way, management leads a certain way, that really is a mind shift change and also dealing with multi generations throughout the workplace. So it's not something that's done overnight, and it takes time and change of behavior and really being transparent and communicating what's taking place and what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I think a lot of organizations and have found that it is a lot tougher than that. Is a lot more effort that's going to be needed in order even to
Mhm.
do it successfully.
Mhm.
Yep. Dom, your input here.
Yeah, having being a DEI practitioner and working in the public sector, especially after the murder of George Floyd, a lot of organizations have expressed the need and stuff for DEI training. Unfortunately, and so like a lot of organizations did the bare minimum, so they were just looking to check a box. So
Yeah.
like and just pretty much say that that was their push and stuff to towards creating a diverse, equitable, and inclusive environment. And now that time has gone by, and so like a little bit is less prominent in the media, and so like in organization, it's like we're seeing that's where we're seeing a downturn and stuff in the need for DEI. A lot of organizations and stuff like when they're recruiting for DEI practitioners or chief diversity officers, they don't even have a plan in place, and so as presented so like in the report so like for HR trends, and so they are looking for these individuals to come on board and create those initiatives and stuff for the organization when they don't even have these in place for themselves. So they're really just not setting that person up for success.
Yeah. Rainer, what has been your filler out there as to why DEI is on the downturn?
Yeah, I want to follow what Dom had just shared around some of the responses and the backsliding and what we've seen since 2020. My current perspective on it is that the way that many organizations have responded to demands for DEI seem to be really similar to they follow the news cycle. If it's in the news, then there's
Mhm.
external pressure to deal with it. And this image of almost a politician came up. There are great politicians out there, but there are also, certain politicians who will basically trade policies or certain promises for votes. So again, for me, what's aligning this incentive model for many organizations, and I think this is part of what results in the tick the box mentality that John was speaking to, is that DEI, I think for many organizations, has been conceived of as something out there, something that we'll get to once it really gets bad enough. And I think the mistake that is happening here is that many organizations are not recognizing that something is shifting underneath our feet, where DEIB is actually that entire thing that undergirds the human potential and possibility. We are at a turning point, I think, in history where more and more people are awakening to the consciousness of what this principle is. And unless those things are addressed in a more systemic way, which many organizations, speaking to what Asia's also said, the way they have been set up has not been designed over the last 6, 7, 8+ decades to address these basic needs of dignity and belonging and things like that. So when we see these issues that, you go to Forbes, right, you can figure this out. A revolving door of chief diversity officers, mass layoffs, which are also a large impediment to the goals of DEI, right? And then, of course, with many DEI practitioners themselves being set up to fail, being sort of put into what some consultants are calling the DEI industrial complex, there are a litany of problems here. And so we have deep problems when it comes to this field, because this field is trying, I believe, to get us to be deeper thinkers. So what does it look like for all of us to make this our work? Some of us are called to be practitioners, but what can each of us do, to help architect and co-create a new system in which belonging doesn't have to be so hard anymore. Inclusion doesn't have to be hard. So that's kind of my input, Anthony, on the distinction between something that's out there that we'll get to it, and when we have time for it, to actually thinking about this as what undergirds everything that's happening right now in the 21st century and the collapse of the systems that we're seeing.
Yeah, and there was a couple of comments that came in. Don't PMO this to death, right? Don't have this as hey, what's our progress towards it? It's not a progress. It's a forever. It's forever on there, right? You have your KPIs to be able to indicate that. And then there needs to be, and there was a comment on here around being authentic. Employees know when you're just doing it just for the check in the box exercise, because you're not showing up, right? And so with that, it could be on the downturn for employees, because they're just like, yeah, I'm not even participating in that. It's just a check in the box exercise for them anyway. I'm just signing up for more work, versus it really truly being a cultural transformation. Rainer, you had talked about some of the aspects of the challenges of DEI progress. Nella, back to you.
Okay. Yeah. So, as discussed, some of the priorities have shifted over the last 3 years. And while DEI still remains important, providing a great employee experience, talent retention, and attraction have become critical priorities. D&I work does not only exist within the HR department, but it requires the support from everyone in the organization. In 2021, conversations about equality and social justice moved D&I from 8th to the 4th place within our HR Trends report. But this year, we noticed that despite some high-performing HR departments and positive DEI work, it continues to decrease in priority. And this year, it moved to from 4th to 6th place. And a lot of the challenges that we saw in 2022 really had to do with strategy, governance, and leadership. So these were some of the main hurdles that D&I practitioners had to face. Another emerging data point is that importance of tapping into the employee voice to understand DEI through their lenses, through their data and metrics, is extremely key. As we examine the report, it remains unclear why many organizations that reported not experiencing any barriers are still not performing well in DEI. And it really ties back to data. It's really crucial to measure progress and identify areas of improvement, but you need data in order to really close the gap and report on that progress.
Yeah, this is a lot. This slide details the life or the challenges that DEI practitioners face. Asia, why don't you tell us about your insight as it relates to? Are you able to relate to some of these barriers?
I can relate to every single one of them. These are all, each of these barriers are real, and it really, really does pose a challenge when you're trying to roll out a program or implement this new culture change when there's no budget or very little funding allocated to support the initiatives. There's no paid staff or department for this, and you have employees volunteering who were hired to do a separate job. And so this is a part-time job for them within the organization. Leadership support often can be self-serving or just a checkbox to say that, yeah, I signed up to do this. Without HR support and having that data, there is no true starting point in your the blind leading the blind trying to roll out a program. But what this does allow is for committees or for departments to find innovative ways to engage with the workforce, and you do self-discovery of what those challenges are to start the culture shifts, and it generates the momentum for mentorship, relationship building, and that can lead to upward or lateral movement within an organization.
Yeah, I can tell you by being, a part of this myself, it's members that are DEI practitioners. We're resourceful people. We have to make magic from what we have, and because in most cases it's not fully funded. It's not like you're doing multiple roles, and as a result of that, that taps people out pretty quickly. You only can work at 200% for so long before you're just like, hey, is this worth it, right? Anybody else wanted to share some insight into some of these common challenges to DEI progress?
Yeah, I'll speak to that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, having worked with so many different organizations and so like in the public sector, and so like it's just an constant issue of the lack of leadership, and so like involvement, and so like they expect like you stated, and so they want us DEI practitioners to be pull a miracle, and so like within the organization, and that's just not feasible with each and every last one of these topics. And so we can relate, and so many organizations want to see the return on investment before they even entertain the idea of having a DEI program, and so in part of their organization. Like, as we said before, it's like the media attention. So for the murder of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, all those individuals and stuff that were so much in the media, and then also the anti-Asian, and so like that was hatred that was caused like due to COVID during that time frame, put a lot of emphasis and stuff on the need of these DEI programs and organizations to respond and stuff to all of this in the media. Now that that's kind of died down, it's like organizations are trying to kind of slide back, and so like, and it shows. And so those organizations that actually do take DEI seriously and understand that it is an ongoing issue, that it's not just a one and done, and so like cookie cutter training program, so like that can be done in like an hour or so, and so like that truly reap the benefits and so of taking DEI seriously. They see it in their revenue, they see it in their employee morale, they see the benefits, and so like in the way that they engage with their consumers, and so as in every way, shape, and form.
And I will say, and again, I hear this as a common pain point, is DEI is not your education program. It is supposed to be about cultural immersion, not just basic education, right? And I have seen it. I've experienced it. Others have as well. Is that it turns out to be, hey, this is an educational program when it is about immersion. It's about being immersed into the experiences and differences that make us human, right? But these are common challenges, and along that line, I think Nella had talked about it, and I definitely would love to get Rainer's insight onto this. What are employees feeling about all of this, right? We know what employers want or don't want. We know what the practitioners need to be successful in the challenges that they're facing. But while all this moving and shaking is going on, what impact is that having to employees even wanting this? Some are even saying, you know what, I don't even want to hear that. As soon as you hear the term, you roll your eyes. What's the employee sentiment?
Well, I think that resonates so much with me, Anthony, what you're saying there. So I'll probably start here. So DEIB is, these aren't just letters. These are deep aspirations of the human collective. or at least hopefully the human collective. And so I think one of the things that I'm seeing just in terms of sentiment is people are tired of being gaslighted around what DEIB is. Now people, we're at the point, I think, where many employees, people who work in organizations, have heard this tune enough times. They've heard all the words, they've gotten all the signals, the CEOs have made the statements. And yet, when it comes to the palpable and tangible differences that people need in the workplace, in their immediate experience, we're not really meeting a lot of those needs. So to answer this question more directly, what I would say is the employee sentiment as it relates to DEIB really depends on who you are, right? To honor, right, that first pillar of diversity. Every single person is a world, which means that, again, these aren't causal. They're much more correlations than anything. But, someone who's been in a CEO position for 25 years may think very differently from someone who's been stuck at the middle management level for the last 15 years of their career, right? Somebody from a certain background is going to have some serious thoughts about DEIB, whereas, others, they just see it as a tick the box or something to try and learn a little bit about so that they don't get fired for, let's say, a racially insensitive remark. So what I would say is, the answer is as diverse as the individuals that make up our world and our organizations themselves. But the trend that I'm seeing, Anthony, is that people really I think many people would much rather have a CEO or a leader or an organization say, hey, we haven't done this thing all that well, or even to say, hey, DEI isn't necessarily a priority for us right now. I know that can sting a little bit because this is so important, but at the same time, I think what I'm noticing is many people just want honesty. And if we can move, let's say 5% representation of, let's say, folks with disabilities, right, in the senior manager and above level to even 10%, if we can get concrete like that, and organizations can say, this is what we're going to do to move up this level of representation, I think folks would much rather take an honest 5% than an inflated 75% proclamation of these great things we're going to do, and yet the bottom line is a person's experience, and you really can't argue with that.
Yeah. And this is really the change of the workforce, right? It used to be employer choice, right? You had to adapt in order to get to the employer of choice. Now it's shifted. It's employee of choice. And DEIB is a hack for employers to meet employees where they are. And you can't put that into a bucket or two. You're going through this whole thing of trying to figure out, are we on a war on talent? Oh, no, actually, you're just on a war of improving your work experiences for people. How about that? Right? So, no, thank you, Rainer, for that.
Thank you.
All right. And so one other thing that we definitely need to talk about is the structure of DEI. If an employer is to move into that direction, what are the trends that we're seeing there, Nella?
Yeah, if we decided to increase governance, it will be directly tied to positive impacts when it comes to DEI outcomes. According to our report from last year, 70% of our respondents indicated that they did not have a DEI governance framework, which made it unclear who was accountable for what within the strategy. Additionally, 57% reported they didn't have a DEI team or a dedicated resource. However, it is known that organizations with dedicated DEI resources are 34% more likely to be high performing compared to those without. So at McLean & Company, we understand that there's a no one size fits all approach to creating a D&I governance framework. However, we do recommend that organizations leverage advisory groups, D&I task forces or committees, in addition to having senior leadership buy-in and HR support. These groups can help establish accountability, set goals, and develop initiatives that align with the organization's values and culture. So by implementing a D&I governance framework, organizations can create a more inclusive workplace that benefits everyone.
And as you can see here, based off of this data, that the majority of employers don't have a DEI governance framework. And this is where a lot of times it just falls to HR to execute, right? Or a singular person here. So, but how important is the structure of DEI resources to outcomes? Because you hear that all the time. Like you see, somebody has a fancy title, and then you realize that they're a person of one with no influence, or you might see that HR is the one that's implemented. But there are some employer organizations in which they have a full staff, right, dedicated to it, and then you might hear that they're the first to go, right, and as it relates to turnover. What's the best structure? And how important is it that it's structured in a certain type of way in order to get the outcomes that that employees and employers expect? Who wants to take a stab at that?
I'll jump in here, Anthony.
All right.
Really, when we think about the structure, what I've seen is HR and D&I operate totally separate, and there's a silo when really D&I is a subset of HR, just like comp and rewards, L&D. D&I falls under that same umbrella, but when we really think about what DEIB is, every person has to take accountability for this. It's each person's responsibility, as Rainer has said throughout this. When it comes back to us being humans, employees being the number one asset to an employee, everyone has to take accountability, and it's not the underrepresented responsibility to educate and inform those of how we should treat one another and what's appropriate and not appropriate to say. And it just leaves a lot of opportunity for growth within an organization to develop others' strategic and leadership competencies, especially for first-time leaders. So it's really about behavioral change, and it starts really within the person and within the organization, departments working together and not in silos.
Yeah, I mean, it falls on everyone. And when the leaders don't serve as an example, or they show disinterest, like regardless of what the company is doing, it's failing, right? The outcome is on the downward trajectory. Dom, how is the structure of DEI resources in the public sector, and what are some of the aspects that you see are different than maybe in the private sector as relates to the way DEI is structured?
Yeah. What I've seen is that DEI should to mimic what Asia had said, that it should be ingrained in every aspect within the organization. However, that it is being led by typically either their HR professional or their chief diversity officer with larger organizations. Smaller organizations, everything is pretty much on the left to the responsibility of their HR manager or HR director. But there needs to be more emphasis and stuff with setting up these DI practitioners and professionals and stuff for success. It needs to be ingrained in every single aspect of within the business, with their business practices, their hiring practices, so their just overall culture. And that's kind of hard for some of these organizations that, especially in certain geographic regions and stuff in the U.S., so where our culture has been ingrained, so with systemic racism, so throughout a number of years or since the very beginning. We have to, organizations more importantly just need to be aware of where they really stand, and so with DEI, what asking CEOs and so many of these organizations saying that they don't see that they have a DEI issue, so are really just lying to themselves or just being in denial of the fact that, oh yes, they claim that they tend to be diverse, but that tends to be more on the lower level. As soon as they get into this senior level position, so within their own company, tends to be more of a homogenous group, and just of all white men. So you can't really say that you're truly creating a diverse organization. So when that's not evident, and at all levels within the organization.
There's a couple things that came up, and then we can move on. Is One is it effective for HR to be the leader of this or to own it? And when is it appropriate to do so? And then two, is the person who serves as the leader of this function, is their background also important? So some of the aspects around it is, if you have a DEI leader in which individuals can't identify any of the things around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging to, does that make it ineffective in the perception of though that this is another check in the box exercise when we have those other challenges that fall into play? Rainer, what's your thoughts on those perspectives?
Yeah, these are all really important questions. My take on it is how important is the resources to outcomes? It's very important. Now, how do we structure those resources? My answer would say it really depends on the organization, because every organization is different. And so for myself, when I work with organizations, I don't go by a rule book. I think there are some cases in which DEI can sit within, let's say, a larger human capital organization. But I think the question would be, okay, how do we do that if we don't want certain things to backfire? Because sometimes putting them together can actually pose certain risk. It just depends on what's actually going on the ground. In some cases, and again, every organization, it depends on how they choose to structure it, right? Sometimes DEI can sit better within talent and organizational development. And there's always questions about, well, what's their relationship to the HR function? I would say what's important in terms of structuring is to try and sense into how to create space for actual DEI resourcing that isn't at odds with some of the incentives that sometimes come up in, let's say, an HR function. They're both very important. Sometimes we benefit by putting them together if the correct alignments and cooperative elements are there, but sometimes they may not actually work really well together. And so, I would say this is something that I think many of us are still exploring, that we're still looking for data on. And there are other practitioners and consultants who actually suggest, based on their experience and the research they've done, that DEI actually is completely separate from the HR department. So I can't necessarily say, oh, this is definitely how it should be. But in my experience as an executive coach, and increasingly in my experience as a consultant, I'm seeing that the issues are in the tissues, is what they like to say in the world of psychological healing and trauma. And so I think when it comes to organizational healing and DEI, we also have to look at the micro level to understand what's actually appropriate. Anthony, I didn't get to address like the who is in the position and all of that, but I would say quickly that the who in the position is really important. And one of the first things I'm looking for is, does this person have the ability to unlearn and a history of having demonstrated that? Because in terms of resourcing, look, DEI is a really complex endeavor. Sometimes representation really is important, especially if that person, due to, for example, some of the identities that they may represent or embody, can in that way be a support to the employees and staff. And also what I'm looking for is that person well resourced, especially if they're from a historically excluded group identity or experience. And then of course, secondly, if let's say they have come from a historically, we would say privileged background, do they have the ability to actually embody the principles, or are we having a repetition of hey, we got somebody, hope it works out? So lots of questions to ask there, hard stuff, but I absolutely agree that structuring the resources correctly is definitely going to be critical as a first step to long-term success.
Thank you. So as we all know, workload is the number one aspect on this. Nella, did you want to wrap us up with this insight?
Yeah. So we already discussed the lack of strategy, support, and data, but as Anthony mentioned, workload is definitely a big challenge to perform the work. Our survey found that most respondents indicated that D&I practitioners are supporting an average of 5 to 9 initiatives. As the work continues to expand for this function, it encompasses domains such as culture, well-being, corporate social responsibility. However, broadening this functional area can take away from resources and time that could be dedicated to fostering a culture of belonging and ensuring equity. So it's important to recognize the number of responsibilities that D&I practitioners are taking on and to ensure that they have the necessary resources and support to effectively carry them out.
This is other duties as assigned, y'all, for DEI practitioners, in addition to their regular job title. And this is definitely common pain points that DEI practitioners are stressed, right? Not only are they balancing all those challenges that Nella just talked about, but also the other things that employees are concerned about. You know, job security. That when people leave, that they have additional duties tied into them. So I would like to end off with a question to the panel, which is, you know, how can we turn things around? How can we make employees and DEI practitioners smile just like this right here? So Dom, why don't we start off with you? Just what advice would you give to those that are doing the work today, to kind of turn things around as we're moving towards the next level of DEIB?
I would say that the most important piece that I would highlight would be to change your mindset, so like on what it means, and so as far as seeking change within an organization, instead of seeking change, and so we should seek evolution. We need to. People don't change. It's like they evolve. So if we want individuals within the organization to help realize that this work is important and how vital it is, and so like to not only just, even though it may not affect them directly, it affects them affects someone that they might care about or come into contact with, so that this is important work.
Awesome. Rainer, what would you say?
Yeah, I'm going to speak to this question as an executive coach, and my perspective and experience led me to believe that a lot of this begins with the consciousness of the people who are leading the organization. And of course, I believe everybody has the ability to lead in a certain way, but with the majority of organizations still embodying a very hierarchical form, unless the people at the helm of the organization actually develop the level of consciousness to understand what DEIB really is, which in the case of practitioners, I like to think of the DEI practitioner as somebody who's tending a garden, but it's the plants in the garden that have to do their own growing. So in that way, okay, we can prune, we can water, we can set things up correctly. That's the extent of our job, though, because we can't become the whole garden ourselves. We are but the gardener in this case. So speaking to executives, one of the things I want to say is, many executives probably at heart are nice people, but what goes on is niceness doesn't translate to the cresting impacts that we're seeing systemically. And so this disconnect, I believe, has to be addressed by some serious work at the leadership development level. Without recognizing that, what's going to happen is we're going to repeat this cycle, and we're going to repeat this karma. And I believe that whether you're an executive or anybody else, we want to leave better legacies, and we also want to know that we show up to work making a positive difference, not just saying we did our best, here's all this racism, here's all this ableism, here's all this sexism, but we tried, and that's good enough for us. So I would invite people, especially people who have access to some of the levers of power, to consider whether they want to feel good with themselves based on what other people are saying only, or whether there's something internal to themselves that they would like to go to sleep with that night saying, yeah, like this thing was hard. I had to see power here. I had to correct this. I've been doing that for 50 years, but I'm willing to do this thing just a little bit differently and see what kind of shift that makes. So my call really is to the people in the executive suite today.
Asia.
What I'll say is you've got to meet people where they are. We all are coming to the table with different background, educational, work experience. And so you've got to meet people where they are and find that happy medium so that we can find a way to be collaborative and meet the goals. And, I don't like to overdraw this, but surveys are really important. It provides a lot of data and context around your workforce and really understand what the pain points and what those needs are, and work with your HR team and try and come up with a solution, because sometimes it may not necessarily be the tools and resources. It could be resources that people need to fulfill their personal life and get leverage there. So really understanding and assessing what you offer as an organization to keep people coming back or making you stand out. And on an individual level, evaluate your moral compass and how you're treating people, how you're talking to people,
Absolutely.
and how are you showing up at the end of the day. How are you showing up for yourself, and how are you showing up for other people? Because that truly indicates the type of environment and culture that you're going to create. If you're feeling real dark on the inside, you're going to show up as that person who isn't the friendliest, who isn't welcoming. You're not being inclusive that way. You're not being diverse. Take a look in the mirror. Just take
That's
a look
right.
in the mirror and assess and really see, are you happy with who you are and who you are showing up as? And not just for everybody else, but for yourself. Are you happy with you at the end of the day? Because that's going to determine a lot in how you show up.
Yeah. No, this is great, guys. Look, this is just the beginning of the conversation, right? This is just the true landscape, and the reality is our workforce, our demographics are changing, and we have a multi-generational workforce, and those that are across this entire spectrum. And until we are able, we meaning corporations, organizations, are able to meet and until we're able to meet them where they are, there will be a need for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. I look forward to continuing this conversation, and taking this as baseline as we really talk about what the new metrics should look like. What should they be, the ones that we just looked at, or how can we evolve them? Are we measuring the right things now that we have the B part in there? Like, how does this look like in a new shape, way, and form in order to maintain it? Because obviously, this is, again, it's not an initiative. It's truly a cultural transformation. So with that, thank you all the panelists that you volunteered your time to really have a down to earth conversation, and also McLean and Company for all of the data to be able to really set the groundwork for future conversations. It's not over, y'all. It's not over. Now it's time to take this as a baseline and really talk about, are we measuring the right things? The invitations and panelists to be determined, all to get to the very last session, in which we have a C-suite roundtable, and the reality and our goal here is that those that are on the second part will watch this, and then the C-suite will watch part 1 and part 2 as we talk about a call to action. It truly is time to get this right. And wow, again, I think I have mentioned this already, but happy International Women's Day. We did not have an event in February to say also happy Black History Month. Black history is American history. And so to end off the International Women's Month, we're going to have a special event in which we're going to have a a panel of professional Black women featuring Elizabeth Leiba. I don't know if any of you have heard of her. She is a LinkedIn voice. She has a new book out called "I'm Not Yelling." Actually, I'm going to come off the stage and have Siobhan Reed host this, and those invitations will be there as well. And this will be an amazing event to close off this month. And again, thank you all for attending. And let's continue the conversation. All of those, I can't wait until later on tonight to go into those comments and address everything. And again, thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. Share, like, comment, and then also to see you on the next panel. So until then, have a good afternoon. And again, thanks for attending.